Hi besties, it's Shar. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to the final days of the year. 2025 is just a couple of days away, which means I can officially do my top books of 2024, the best books that I've read. I have 9 books on this list, so without further ado, let's jump into it. And I exclusively wanted this list to be the books that really stood out to me that I just absolutely adored. There's lots of books that I did adore, so I did a favorite books of 2024 earlier in the month. You can go back to watch that if you want to see some of the 4.5 star reads that I had. But the first book on the best books list is The Right Move by Liz Tomford, which is a surprise to absolutely no one who's been on this channel throughout the year. This book was just everything that I want it to be, and in this story we're following Indy and Ryan. Indy is a flight attendant and she is engaged to someone who was her friend for her entire life, except he cheats on her and she moves out and now she doesn't have a place to live. And her best friend has a twin brother who has this really big pet house. He's like a very famous basketball star, and she convinces her brother to let Indy move in. So Indy and Ryan are now roommates, and of course, as we know, the proximity leads them to fall in love. This is fake dating. He's a millionaire, and it's just so sweet. What I really loved about this story is how Ryan showed affection and love to Indy. It was so much about acts of service, words of affirmation, and like just genuinely being there for her. It was grumpy sunshine, but in the way that I love, and that even though his personality was grumpy, he was never rude to Indy. Like, he was always just so loving and attentive to her, and I just adored this book so much. I think about Ryan and Indy all the time, and I really recommend the audiobook for this one because the narrator for Ryan has a really good voice and it just works very well for this story. I have Grace Draven on my top books of the year list. Grace Draven wrote Entreat Me, and Entreat Me is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, except don't want your man because I want his daddy. That already works for me. So in this story, we're following Louvain and Ballard. And Louvain she is a widow and she has a little sister who is like getting into this relationship with this man that no one really knows. He's kind of coming to town. They're very happy and in love, but Louvain is suspicious and she's very protective of her sister. So when her sister is like, hey, I'm gonna go to this man's house, Louvain's like, actually, no. I'm gonna go with you. And she goes with them and she meets this man's daddy. So of course we have the relationship between Louvain and Ballard. I'm gonna keep pronouncing that completely wrong in different ways throughout this. But the way their banter is just so much fun. They tease each other in the best way possible. It is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so there is a curse going on here. We know Beauty and the Beast in the storyline. Oh my gosh, their banter was so good. I love that they're older for this timeline period. And Grace Draven, once again, has convinced me that these people are soulmates. And that is very hard to do. I just adored this with my whole fucking heart. If you like Beauty and the Beast retelling, you like really good banter, you like folklore, curses, magic that's going on here, it is everything I wanted and more. Tessa Bailey, what are you doing here? It's Fangirl Down. This one we're following Wells, and Wells had a really significant rise to fame as a golf star. However, the past couple of years, he's just been like going through it. Like, has not been winning, has gotten in a lot of trouble. His reputation is shit, but he has one woman who is at every single one of his games, believing in him and cheering him on, and it eventually pisses him off, right? He's like, I suck. Like, stop rooting for me. And the woman who's cheering him on, Wells Bell, is Josie. And he goes up to her after he loses the game and he's like, stop rooting for me. Like, I'm literally a shitty person. Stop rooting for me. And he says something that really hurts her, so then she does stop rooting for him. You can see in her expression like how much he hurt her. So he ends up tracking down like her shop and it's destroyed by a hurricane and she needs money, and he feels so bad that he's like, okay, I'm gonna do this like competition here and you can be my golf coach. Is that what it's called? I don't know. She has the experience and skill set here. Like, there's a reason she's rooting for him. And he's gonna give her part of the money and like pay her so that she can repair her shop as an apology for hurting her feelings. And of course, they go on this golf tournament. It's traveling together. They're in a hotel room. What I just love about this is that it is Grumpy Sunshine, but Wells, my man, is down bad, on his fucking knees for Josephine. Like, he is obsessed with her, completely in love with her. And I just love to see a man like this, honestly, in this book. That is my ideal man. I thought this was so funny, so unserious. The kind of book that you read when you just want a silly, goofy time, and this book is the epitome of a silly, goofy time. And while this list is a lot of romance, it is not exclusively romance. So we have The Haunting of Elkwood. Of course we would. If you watched my Summerween vlogs, you know that this book had me, I was shook by how much I loved this book. So The Haunting of Elkwood is following Talitha Velkwood. And Talitha lived in like this really small developing community. I'm talking like maybe 10 houses. And one day while Talitha is away at college, the town disappears. I mean, it disappears. Not like they got up and left. I mean, like, they stopped existing in this version of reality, and now some kind of hologram of them exists. The town is there, and you can see the people living in the town if you like go into the town. But you can't interact with them. Like, they're not in our reality anymore. They've kind of glitched out of time space. That sounds very funky, and I hope that you understand what I mean. But the only people who can go into the town are people who are from the town. And there are only 3 people who escaped the town. Talitha and her 2 friends. People are understandably very confused about what the fuck happened. And there's a lot of people who research. And there is one group of researchers who approaches Talitha many decades later and says, hey, we noticed specific activity. Here are some photographs of what we've seen. We would love to figure out what's going on, but there's only a few people who can go into the town, who can even get near it, and everyone else said no. Talitha says yes, she has things that she's left behind in this town that she just needs closure on. And by things, I mean her family and the story behind what happens in this town. So she agrees and she goes in it, and you're following Talitha as she continues to explore this town, and we're trying to understand, how does a town stop existing in our reality? And what kind of phenomena is this? But also, it's so much more about Talitha's trauma and pain and grief and just the things that she dealt with as a child that continue to haunt her through her adulthood. And I just loved this book so much. If you want to know what happened in this book that made it like a 5-star all-time favorite for me, you can watch the Summerween vlog, which I will have linked somewhere in this video or in the description, because if you know, you know. And Ready or Not by Cara Bassone, me putting a pregnancy book on this list. This story follows Eve, and Eve has this like really amazing one-night stand with a man who owns a bar. They have really great chemistry. It was a fun time, except Eve gets pregnant. Yeah. And she decides she's gonna keep the baby, and she goes up to this man and she's like, hey, I'm having your baby. And he is understandably shook. He's not like against her keeping the baby, but he's like, I have a girlfriend. Without you like freaking out here, he didn't cheat. They broke up when he and Eve hooked up, but then they got back together like several weeks after that. And of course, after that, Eve finds out that she's pregnant. So this romance is not actually between Eve and her baby daddy. It is between Eve and her best friend's brother, Shep. Shep is just that man. He is the epitome of sunshine, and I just love him so much. He's so supportive of Eve the entire way. It's just such a light in this book. It's also pining because he's been in love with Eve like his whole life, and he's just never said anything because he's always just thought that Eve was out of his league. And as he supports Eve through her pregnancy, they fall in love. Again, me with a pregnancy book on this list. But in this case, I loved the story so much just because of Eve and Shep, and then all of like the things that were happening in the side with the baby's father. It isn't as black and white as he has girlfriend, he don't want to be part of baby's life. That's not what's going on at all. but I love this book so much, so of course it had to get on the top 10 books of the year for me. Chuck Tingle, he's here. This is Bury Your Gaze, a book that I read very much inspired by Gabby from Gabby Reads, and I loved this book. Oh my gosh. Okay, so in this story we're following Misha, and Misha is like a Hollywood director, and he directed this TV show series. I think the TV show series, can you be nominated for an Oscar for a TV show? I don't know, but he is directing a TV show series, and he's also just been nominated for an Oscar, perhaps for something else that he's done. However, the production company that he's working for, the ones that are producing his TV show, wants him to end the show and the series in a very specific way. However, Misha knows that he has been building up the entire series to end with this queer couple getting together. Producers are like, you can have them get together if one of them dies, or you can have them not get together at all, and they end up with this other side character instead. And of course, Misha is fucking insulted, as he should be. He's like, I'm not burying my gaze. Like, are you fucking stupid? I'm not doing that. They were always supposed to end up as a queer couple. Like, that is the writing I had in mind, and I will not write anything else. Shortly after that, some weird ass shit starts to happen. Perhaps mind-bending reality kind of stuff. Misha really quickly comes to realize that he is in danger. And he also comes to realize that maybe some of the characters in his previous works are suddenly alive and trying to kill him. It's very weird. It's very strange. It's so good. And even to this day, I remember that fucking forest scene. And I think this book would make such a good movie. But I love this so much. The character work, the silly goofiness of some of the kills. It's like a love letter to classic horror movies, which I loved, but also it was still scary and full of tension, and I just loved where it ended up going and the story that we were telling. There's also a aromantic and asexual character in here who I adore with my whole heart and ends up having a really big part in this story, and this character has the most iconic line I've ever read. Daydream by Hannah Grace. This is a shock literally to everybody because I don't like college romances, and this is a college romance. So in this story, we're following Hallie and Henry. And Hallie is going through a hard time. She's been with her childhood friend, and they just like naturally got into a relationship, but she doesn't feel anything for him like at all, outside of like friendship love. And one day he breaks up with her, and she feels relieved. Now she's on her own, and she's realized that she's lived her entire life thus far really just trying to please everyone around her, and she has no one doing the same for her. So she makes it her mission to make friends, and she works at this bookshop and she hosts this book club, and while she's doing that, she ends up meeting Henry. Now she doesn't know Henry because this is strangers to friends to lovers. They go to the same college, so she knows of Henry. She's just never had any interactions with him. Henry and Hallie immediately hit it off, and they decide that they're going to be friends because Henry is literally just a nice guy. And we're exploring Hallie's growth as she comes into herself, learns to stand up for herself, but also makes friends and realizes that she is worthy of love and people love her for who she is. But Hallie is also writing a story, and she's writing a romance, but she doesn't really have a lot of experience there because she never felt anything for her prior boyfriend. So Henry hears of this and is like, hey, why don't we just do like fake dates? Like, I will take you out and you can have all these experiences that you can write about, and that's just me helping you out as a friend. So they agree to do this, but of course, as we know, it's not really fake dating, but it is fake dating. It leads to real feelings. And what I love about this is that you're just following Henry and Hallie as they gradually fall in love. That's all this is. It is Hallie exploring her identity, it's Hallie exploring herself, and it's Henry and Hallie falling in love throughout the story as they deal with their own lives. It's them as individuals deciding to come together, and this book is, call it what you want, Taylor Swift song from Reputation as a book. That's what this is, and I loved it so much. As soon as I finished it, I'm not joking, I spent the entire night listening to Call It What You Want on repeat, grinning like a fucking idiot, and just like feeling so in love, which is hard for books to do that, but I felt in love. I was blushing and giggling and kicking my feet for a man. And that should tell you that this book was fucking good. This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan follows the story of Soledad. And Soledad is married to a man that she's been married to for a very long time. As far as she knows, they're like happy. Their relationship is a little bit rocky, and she suspects that he's perhaps having an affair with his assistant, but she just doesn't want to see that yet. Unfortunately for Soledad, something happens that I, as a reader, was like, what? Like, the drama, the messiness. I was shook. It's not actually funny. It's not jokey times. Like, it actually just all blows up in their face. And Soledad is forced to pick up the pieces and find a way to be a single mother supporting her daughters who live this very, very expensive lifestyle because of the income that her husband brought in. And there is a very key component to this story, and that's Judah Cross. Now, Judah Cross plays a role in everything that happens in a way that is so messy that I was obsessed. I was obsessed because when Soledad and Judah get together, because obviously it's their love story, I was like, Kennedy, how did you come up with this? Like, I was in it. It was so good. It was so dramatic. But what I really love about this is that this is so much about Soledad exploring herself and her identity and learning what it means for her to be in this point in her life, how she's learning to love herself so much. And Judah is just genuinely so respectful of that. And Judah also has these twin boys who are autistic and just like caring for them. And I just love them. And you all know character work is so important to me. And these people felt like real people. Like, I felt like I was reading their real story. They were just so well developed. And when Judah and Soledad come together, it is like that fun messiness because we know what happened before that point, but you're also rooting for them. Like, they're so good together, and Judah Cross genuinely is just that man. And finally, number 9, Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage. When I tell you I recorded a vlog, so you're gonna see my thoughts and feelings on this book. It's on the topics of the year, so spoiler, you know that I fucking loved it. It was a 5-star read. So Lost and Lassoed is following Teddy and Gus. This is part of the Rebel Blue Ranch series. I don't think you need to read the whole series to understand it. I personally never read book 1. Book 2 was just okay for me, but Lost and Lassoed, she's just that girl. She's just that girl, okay? So Teddy and Gus are lifelong friends. It is age gap because Gus is Teddy's best friend, older brother. And he's like 10 years older than her, maybe even 13 years older than her. They never liked each other, okay? They grew up together, but they never liked each other, largely because Teddy was a bit of a rebel, a badass. She's the daughter of a rock star, okay? And she and Emmy, Gus's little sister, always got into trouble. And Gus always viewed that as Teddy's fault. But Teddy just thinks Gus has a stick up his ass and genuinely does not like him. So the mutual dislike for each other. However, Gus is a single father to a 6-year-old girl. He does co-parent, but the mother, Cammie, she is away because she's a lawyer and she just has to be gone for a couple of weeks in the summer, or a few weeks in the summer. And Gus is struggling because he's a rancher, he's taking care of the farm, and it's just a lot of responsibilities. So he ends up taking on Teddy as his nanny for that short period of time because his family pushed him to. Like, he had no other choice but to do that. Teddy agrees because she loves Riley, Gus's daughter, and she ends up staying in the house with them and obviously taking care of Riley. The forced proximity forces them to have real conversations, and as they're doing that, they're gradually falling in love. And Lila Sage just built this up so well because it's not like a switch flipped. You're literally following their day-to-day life as they slowly come to get to know each other in significant ways, and they fall in love. But also, this book is so much about father-daughter relationships, and the relationships that Teddy has with her dad, I adored with my whole heart. It was so well done, and I just loved it so much. At no point was I bored. Lila told this story in a way that felt real, and I loved it in every way. Separate to that, this book was spicy. Talk about sexual chemistry. Talk about bed chem. That is Gus and Teddy, because they got into the bed and I was shook. I listened to this every day when I was driving to work, and the way I was blushing, doing this, fanning myself because when they hooked up, I was scandalized. I was like, oh my God. Like, there's one scene I'm gonna tell you right now that's gonna be explicit. The first time they have sex, Gus is like, I want you to sit on my face. And Teddy is like, saddle up, cowboy, right? She gets on his face. And then she's like, okay, well, we should have some kind of signal so like you don't suffocate, right? Like if I'm crushing you, you've got to tell me. And he's like, if I'm gonna die from eating you out, then like so be it. Now shut the fuck up because I want to have my last supper. Bratty sub. That's like the vibes it's giving. Not all the way, but it's giving those vibes. I loved it. I was blushing. I was giggling. I was there for it. I love the tension. There's a scene that literally goes from them having sex and me blushing and giggling. And the next clip in that vlog is me crying from reading this book. It was everything I wanted and more, and I'm so fucking glad I waited to film this video because Lost and Lassoed can be on this list. I hope I've convinced you to read it because if there's any book on this list that you should read, it should be all of them. But it should be Lost and Lassoed, and this could be us. That said, besties, that does bring us to the end of this video. Those are my top 9 books of 2024. Let me know what your favorite book of the year was in the comments below, or if you've read any of these books and you also love them, let me know. With that said, my loves, I am off to edit this video because I've got to go to work in a couple of hours, and I will see you in my last vlog of the year on Tuesday. Goodbye.